there's an important story with this for Veterans for Peace. I'm actually going to recommend to Susan and others that we have a one give Jimmy Carter posthumous membership, uh, but also two create some type of Jimmy Carter award. You know,
Oh,
because I think we can get into all this, right? But the idea of like just like us, yeah, his presidency, when you start looking at it, you're like, holy shit, this is awful.
Yeah.
Aspects of it. But then what did he do? And so a lot of us, that's how we were. A lot of us who I took part in war three times,
oh yeah.
right? I mean, like, how am I going to cast a stone at Jimmy Carter? I did essentially the same thing, So, yeah, but we can get into all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's
Did
get
you
into
did you
all that.
watch any of the funeral service?
No, I did not. I
Uh-huh.
did not. How was
It
it?
was, I recommend watching it.
Yeah.
It was quite moving, and of course he had enough time to he and his family had enough time to really plan something that
Sure.
would
Yeah.
make a meaning for him.
Yeah.
And, well, I think the most positive qualities of him came through in that,
Right.
and many of the eulogies were really pretty. Uh, none of them were phony, except maybe Biden. But what was so to me, Kathy watched my wife. She just had to watch it all, but I watched a lot of it. But what to me was so striking was how you couldn't get past this notion that this person was real.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't change based on the winds, you know.
Yeah.
What he did because he thought that was the right thing to do.
Right. Right.
And, and a lot of that I would disagree with, and much of it, foreign policy wise, was because he was getting his information from Brzezinski, who,
Right. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but
Um,
but basically he was not like and he suffered throughout the whole presidency that he was not from the lineage. He was not a son of the ruling class,
right.
and uh, and he brought with him, his view of the world that he got from being a peanut farmer in South Georgia.
Right. And I mean he was at the Naval Academy during the Second World War. I mean, all
Yeah,
of that, right? I mean, like that would have influenced who he was and his
yeah,
worldview and
yeah,
how he was willing to accept. And he was the governor from Georgia.
yeah.
So
Governor of
I think,
Georgia.
right? And his purpose was to, have we started?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've
His,
started.
his purpose was to, I think, heal the nation after Vietnam and heal the nation after Watergate. And
yeah,
I think a lot of focus and the economy, of course, the conditions in the U.S., that was where his attention was. And
yeah,
I think maybe a lot like Barack Obama, he let go a lot of the foreign policy stuff. It wasn't going to be he was going to trust his advisors
mhm,
and follow their lead on this because this isn't my thing. What do I know? Kind of thing. I think I don't want to be as cynical about Carter as I am about Obama. Because so much of Obama's stuff was also geared toward domestic politics, but certainly that was something with Carter. But Carter, yeah, when you look at Carter's foreign policy, particularly knowing him. So I was born in 1973, just to provide the context.
huh,
So he was the first president I really knew in terms of being aware of. Like
Hmm.
I don't remember everyone talking about Gerald Ford, like I don't remember, but Carter I remember. And the first kind of memory for me of the world was the 1979 hostage crisis in
yeah,
Iran.
yeah, yeah,
And so that kind of was one of the first things to inform my world understanding, my political understanding, my
yeah,
geopolitical understanding, right? Us versus them, all of that,
right,
And certain Carter's when you look back on though at his foreign policy, and it's even a mixed bag might be too kind,
yeah.
but
I
certainly I think
think,
it's worth something
yeah,
examining.
I think he was not. We were just talking about, the consistency of foreign policy from one administration to the next
Yeah,
is The only thing you can take from that is they're all working from the same playbook.
Yeah, I mean they're all have the
And they don't have the freedom to change the playbook.
yeah. I think I just said this the other day about I think it was Biden. I can't remember which, but if you were to replace the word president with emperor, would it make more sense? Right?
Yeah.
In terms of their foreign policy decisions.
Yeah.
If you don't see Jimmy Carter or Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Donald Trump as the elected leader of the American people, but more as the emperor, the man responsible for overseeing an empire, some of the decisions may make more sense. Because we have this idea that the obligation is towards the public, or at least until their domestic political interests. And that's certainly true. I just said that about Barack Obama. It's certainly true. You look at Barack Obama when he comes into office, and Rahm Emanuel is telling him that drone strikes will make him a stronger president. And, certainly Karl Rove telling George W. Bush, wartime commanders in chief get reelected. I
Yeah.
guarantee you that's what David Axelrod and Rahm Emanuel were saying to Obama in 2009 during the Afghan war decisions. As Obama kept troops in Afghan, I'll pick on Obama right now. As Obama kept troops in Afghanistan, that Emanuel and Axelrod were saying to the president, look, Mr. President, yeah, this war in Afghanistan is no good. But if you pull our troops out now and a bomb goes off in Times Square, you're not getting reelected.
Hmm.
I mean, so certainly there's all of that. But the obligations, I think George Kennan said this best in his memo to President Truman after the Second World War, where he said, look, the United States has to paraphrase it here, I might be off of my numbers. It has 55% of the world's wealth, less than 5% of the world's population. The duty of every successive administration will be to maintain that inequality. Right? I mean, this is
Right.
the imperial obligation of the president.
Yeah.
Right? I
Yep.
mean, so I think when you look at that way, coupled with this idea that uh, uh, Jimmy Carter, peanut farmer, governor of Georgia, first priorities are Watergate, Vietnam, healing those things. He certainly right how he handled all that, but then as well too the economic distress of the country.
Oh,
It
yeah.
had to be his first priority, and so yeah, some of these other things you allow your advisors to tell you what to do. Zbigniew Brzezinski being his national security advisor, and I think a lot of people who are familiar with Zbigniew Brzezinski, although I will say in Zabrinski's favor, I had never seen this clip before, and I'll just kind of make a aside here. People haven't seen this. I don't know how long ago this was, during the probably 15 years ago. Brzezinski's on Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough and his daughter Mika Brzezinski,
Right.
and talking about Israel and Palestine. And it's a wonderful clip where Brzezinski tells Scarborough, he says something along the lines of like, your superficial knowledge of Israel and Palestine is embarrassing. So
Wow.
yeah, to Brzezinski's credit, but for the most part, I think people who look at Jimmy Carter, knowing him these last 40 some odd years post presidency as the great humanitarian he was,
Yeah.
to know that his key point is Zbigniew Brzezinski as his national security advisor, right? It's that dissonance that you're like, oh my God, but
Yeah.
it's complicated. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think certainly the courage, put this up front, right? The courage that Carter exhibited in his post presidency made up for, and it's a hard way to do it, but
Yeah.
I think was a deliberate atoning, was a way to reconcile what he had done as president.